Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Good morning, all. Nice to see you back, Saul.
Nice to be back.
Hey, David, are we going to see the minutes soon? Or have you sent them?
No, I have not sent them, but it's on my to-do list. I just finished my last set of tutoring for the semester, so now I actually have some free time to attend to things that falls lower on my I have to do list. The
Okay,
minutes
thank you.
the minutes are always there. It's just they're in the category. Well, I could put them off to tomorrow, and no one except maybe Stanley would notice.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the effort.
I appreciate the interest that people show.
Hank, if you would want to make me a co-host, you're welcome to do so.
Yeah, will do. That's part of my housekeeping didn't get done yet. There you are. You've been code.
Thank you.
I didn't know that hoeing was a verb.
It wasn't until a couple of minutes ago.
I just had a disaster. My basement is flooded, so I can't stay long, and I've got to start cleaning it up. So, unfortunately, it's a long story, but uh, one of the workmen putting in a ground line cracked into a water feed line and down about 4 feet under cement. So, had a long day yesterday getting it fixed, but I'll tell you, being without water is a big problem.
Or too much water in your case.
Water is good. It just has to be in its
Right.
place.
I'm sorry, I missed that, David.
I'd say water is good. It just needs to be in the right place.
You're right. Yep.
I think that's one of our stories in California is we're always worrying about not having.
Copper fittings anymore. They Morning, Miriam.
Good morning, Miriam.
Hi, Marion.
Did anybody notice the size of the sunspot the other day? It was huge. I don't know hope we don't have a problem with it. Trust we won't.
I didn't notice, Will, but I did read that it was supposed to be interfering with radio communications of various manner.
I had never seen one that large before. It was huge. It was like multiple sizes of the Earth.
Where were you looking at this?
It was online somewhere. I ran across it, and it was a picture of the sun, and it showed this huge irregular sunspot. It wasn't round. It was a very unusual shape.
Probably a set of sunspots that merged into a blob.
Well, I finally got a battery system attached to my solar cell, so hopefully if we have a problem, it solves it. The only thing I'm worried about is I'm afraid the electronics of the solar cells and the battery electronics will get wiped out if we have a huge magnetic attack. But anyway, we'll all go if that happens.
So you're going to make your house into a big Faraday cage so that all that outside interference doesn't get in. It's just going to.
I'd like to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. That would also sort of play heck with your cell phone reception, though.
I think there's still some places out on Point Loma at the former NEL that have big gauges.
I was talking to a guy in the Navy, and he said that the military has some things in Faraday cages, but he said a lot of stuff is not. So, of course, he's in the submarine group, so that's a huge Faraday cage.
I think a lot of the the skiffs are effectively big Faraday cages because you go in through big doors, and the whole idea is they don't want any of the electronic emissions inside getting to the outside. And if the inside doesn't get to the outside doesn't get in either.
Now, the last big magnetic pulse was in the middle of the 1800s, and it burned out it melted the telegraph wires. So let's hope we don't get something like that, because then I think a lot of stuff goes down.
And what caused that? The sunspot?
Well, a sunspot comes in and it generates a magnetic pulse, and that magnetic pulse induces current into all the wires.
Yeah.
If it's too much, the wires melt.
Although nowadays we actually have far fewer telegraph wires.
Yeah, there wasn't much electricity back in 1850s.
Well, but they had a lot more telegraph wires than we have nowadays. We don't do things by telegraph.
Yeah. But anyway, an awful lot of electrical stuff, I think, can get burned out. I would expect probably even cell phones and internet will be down for a long time. The problem is if it burns out the grids, the electrical grids, that's the problem.
Any of those long distance transmission lines are sort of prime targets for that kind of thing.
Yeah. And
What
let's hope
about the
it doesn't
fiber
happen.
optic?
Well, it's strictly a probability thing. You can't predict when it's going to happen. It's
But
everything is lined up correctly, and you get a big sunspot.
Dan has a good point. All of the fiber optic networks are pretty much immune to that because they don't have any metal in them.
Right.
Stanley, it's 8:31, but I'm gonna hang on a bit, or ask you to hang on a bit, because we're only up to 14.
Hey, if it were my preference, I would start now because I think People learn to be on time if it starts on time. But of course, I'm speaking to the choir.
Elizabeth Smith, nice to see you with us.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my audio. I'm listening through my hearing aids acoustically through these speakers, so it's not optimal. What did you say, Will?
I was greeting Elizabeth Smith. She hasn't been with us much before, but I'm glad to have her with us.
Yes, thank you, Will.
And
Stan? I was going to ask Stan if he's planning to share his screen, and if so, does he have whatever he's going to share already open on his computer so it's ready to go?
Yes. I have it on my screen. And I will just do a quick test here.
Thank you.
Okay, are you seeing training history?
No. We're not seeing any screen shared.
Oh, oh, I see I just want maximize.
you have to click the share screen icon in the bottom of the Zoom window.
Hi, Stan.
And then you have
Sammy?
to,
Yeah, I'm getting back there.
and then you have to select the correct window and click share.
Now we are seeing a shared screen.
And I think we're seeing your desktop. No, there you go, training history.
Okay, that's my intent. I will stop share now.
Thank you.
Only when you give me the go ahead, Hank.
Yep. We're up to 17 and it's 8:35 here in Hawaii. So I'm going to mute all current and new participants, including you, Stanley. So you got to unmute yourself.
All right, I guess I got the con.
You're
Thank
ready.
you all for being here. And as the announcement indicated, it's to show you a tool that I use. And I think that it is valuable in the area of being aware of my cognitive capabilities and being able to enhance them. And I'd like to share why that is. And after I do that, I will go through the different features of the program. I included a link to the Lumosity site if you're interested in following up on your own. It is the service that I have apparently costs. My son has been paying for it since 2015, and that provided me with a history of my capabilities. And he tells me it costs about $100 a year, a little over $8 a month. I find it worthwhile. All right, now then I'm going to share the program. I'm going to start out with the graph that strikes me. This is a graph of my LPI, which is lumosity something index, which is just an average of all of the tests. And it shows me that, first of all, that indicates that it works, is that when I started out here in April of 2015, all of my scores were down below 500. And then as I worked on it, the scores came up in a matter of a few months, and by October of 2015, they had reached what I consider a plateau. It doesn't really matter what these are right now. It just indicates that they reached a plateau and relatively stayed there. I'm only showing a few of them, which I think indicate some of the outliers and some of the significance. When I get through my points here, I'll show all of them.
Which
Right now,
one
I'm
is,
showing, did I hear a question?
yes, which one is the LPI? Could you just,
The LPI is one negative about this is that it doesn't always color agree. But the one I'm blinking is the average of the 5 other categories, 6 other categories.
got it.
So
So
the
it-
average of all my categories is this one.
Yeah,
And so it reaches a relatively flat plateau and moves along at a consistent rate. I noticed here that for the first over a year, my math capability was very, very low and then jumped up. I have no idea why that is. I don't think all of a sudden I got better at it, but something happened. So I just consider that an outlier and don't worry about it. The other thing that I noticed is that right about this point in February of 2021, I sort of got hooked on a game outside of Lumosity, the Tetris style of a game, and started playing that relatively frequently. It's the Tetris game is the one that is filling in blocks, and then the whole line of them disappear. And for some reason, I started playing that game. And either coincidentally or causal, my score in this category went up. And that was in an area called problem solving. And it may have been coincidental, but I feel that the starting to play that Tetris style games, there are a bunch of different games out there, which incidentally, there are no Tetris style games in Lumosity, but there are problem solving games. So there I saw a change in a capability that I could relate to approximate. That's in retrospect, looking back, that's when I feel that I started playing that Tetris game. Now, one other outlier or one other significant one I noticed was right about here in March of 23, I noticed a feature in Lumosity that allowed me to concentrate on my weaker capabilities. And so I started selecting the games I play with that as a selector for the games. And again, I noticed a definite shift. Let me just delete some of these others. Oh, okay. It was flexibility. The flexibility exercise distinctly went up since March of 23 and has sort of leveled off now. But you'll see it is in the range of all of my other categories. So it's up here now and it's mixed in with the clump. So anyway, that's my reason for feeling that lumosity does have an effect on my capabilities. I don't know whether it had an effect back here. I suspect that was simply learning to play the game and may or may not have related to capabilities. Maybe it did increase my capabilities in the middle months of 2015.
Stanley,
Yes.
would you tell us how these things are measured? Do you take a test and how often and how?
To the best of my ability, they are, the tests are scored, as you can see, each category of test. And they each have a score. And so I have a score for each game.
But how do you take the test? Are they written tests or?
No. All right, let me go back and show you what some of the games are. When maybe it would help to play a game. Let me look at these are different games, and they are grouped by what exercise you're working on. There's memory, working memory. This is not a good example. Here's a better example. All of these are speed tests. The faster you react, the better score you get. And speed match is just telling whether these things change or not. The highway hazard involves information processing, but speed is a factor. Then there's memory. There's tests about memory. Hank, I'm not sure if this is answering your question, but each game is scored and the score is what we're talking about here.
And do you play these games at whenever you feel like it or at a specific time of the month or what?
I play them sometime during each day. I try to. If I go back up to, let me show you home. Here's a calendar that tells me these dates are dates that I played 5 or more games or played any games. It's not a minimum number. But this tells you that I try to do it daily, but I average 4 or 5 games a week.
And you play them on your computer visually like a.
Yeah, on this program, I log into this site and I play them here.
Okay, yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
All right, now, when I go in, when I log in, it says, okay, you want to do your workout. And the basic one that they hand you is get a set of games based on your training habits and preferences. That's the one that I worked on since 2015 and just played whatever games they threw at me. I didn't reject games, which you can. I didn't play particular games that I felt were valuable to me. I just played the games that they recommended. And then, as I say, about a few months ago, I started looking at these, and they say, challenge your estimation on calculation skill, concentrate on math. Or you could deep dive into your vocabulary and reading skills. Or you could just play the ones you want to play. Or you could do a quick workout in 8 minutes. Typically, it takes 15 to 20 minutes to play 5 games for me. But then I saw this one down here, and it says play your weakest games and raise your low game scores. So that's the one I've been selecting when I noticed that my score started rising and raising my PSI or whatever it was. And this tells me I've played games. So let me, well, based on this introduction, why don't you let people unmute and ask me a question?
Sure, let's, well, if you'll stop sharing, I can go back and see who's got their hand up. And
I see Will has a question. Will, what can I
Yeah,
do?
really just a comment. I went in and tried this, Stan, and I was really impressed with how well these games are organized. I thought at first, oh, this is really, really simple, but as you know, these games get more difficult as you go along. And the one I was looking at was called train switching, and they have a whole bunch of different trains that start out and then have to end up in a specific place, and you have to throw switches to switch the train tracks around. And it gets pretty difficult as it gets up further and further into the game, because you have to anticipate way ahead of time what's going to happen. And I found that to be a very challenging game.
Will, did you
I
have,
think I'm going to sign up for this. $100 sounds like a lot, but it really isn't when you consider it's an entire year and what it can do for your brain.
so you had to pay to do this test?
No, it was a freebie.
Oh, good.
I think the historic record of your performance is available if you pay. And that's what I found valuable. My reason for pushing it, if you will, is that we all, I think, are concerned about diminished capability as we age. And I was interested in how I compare over time. I was less concerned with how I compare in my age group. But that is also available. But what I was interested in is how I did over time. And as you can see from the chart, it is relatively stable over 6-7 years since 2015. And that pleases me. In other words, I'm not getting any worse.
Have you compared with your age group?
I'm sorry, what?
Have you compared with your age group?
Yes, I have.
Can I just ask if Don Raymond is trying to raise his virtual hand because he's raising a clap hand? And I just want to know if he wants to ask a question or make a comment.
I'm trying to raise a hand.
Okay.
Just go ahead and
Go ahead,
speak.
Don.
Okay, maybe I need to raise that one.
I got it. What's up,
Anyway,
Don?
can you play one of those games for us?
Yes. All right, let me try.
Before you do, Peter or Arlene has a virtual hand up. Maybe you might want to answer that first.
Okay.
They need.
I just wanted to say that they have a group rate which substantially reduces the cost. So if you can get together a few friends, you can have a group and have the benefits of the paid service, but the cost is much lower.
How
That's all.
big does the group need to be?
I looked yesterday. It's either 5 or 6.
Thank you, Arlene.
I would be interested in joining a group.
Um, okay, let me share a screen again. Am I being shared?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let me see, what, I don't like math. Let me see what's available here.
There's a quick category. Maybe we could do a quick
Yeah.
game.
Maybe I need to go here. This is a. Okay, this gives me, okay,
Yeah, your favorite game.
there's a wide range. Let me. All right, here's some that don't seem to relate to intelligence, but or whatever we're matching here. But let me try this one.
Spitting seed.
Okay, I'm not going to ask to everybody to be muted, but I am just going to ask you to be quiet while I play it. Please don't offer suggestions. Okay. I'm going to pause this. Now that was one that is a little hard to understand what value you get out of trying to estimate an equal number of seeds on each side of the stick. So I just wanted to show you something that seems sort of unrelated. I could show another one that's a completely different type if I could.
How did you move the stick, Stanley? With your mouse?
Oh, yes, that's done with a mouse. Incidentally, you can do this on the phone with a smart app. I mean, a smartphone with an app. But I find the interface far too difficult, and I just don't do it on the phone. But I can share information on the phone. I can show people on the phone what the stats are and things. Mainly, I'm suggesting that if you find this may be of value to you, you look into it and learn it on your own.
Stanley, what
Willie
characteristics?
has a question up.
Yeah, I was just wondering if they have descriptions on how to play the game or demonstrations
Oh,
of each.
yes, every time you play a game, the first option is how to play the game.
Okay.
And you can always pull that up, and I recommend it, even though you played the game a long time. If it's been a while since you played it last, it's worthwhile to go to play the game, how to play the game, just to remind yourself for sure, so that you don't start into the game and say, oh, this is the one where I got to use the arrow keys instead of the mouse or something like that. They use different keys. They for the numeric ones, they use the keypad. For simple decisions, left, right, yes, no. They use the arrow keys, and a lot of them use the mouse for positioning in a graphic program. Hank, you got a question?
Yes, I did have, wait a minute. Oh, yeah. What characteristic does splitting the seeds govern? In other words, if
Well,
you do really well, what part
I
of
think
it?
it's, I believe that was in the flexibility category. You're having to estimate the number of seeds on the table and try to rotate that stick, which is a little error prone, to divide the lot into equal numbers. You can try to count the seeds if there's only 8 in there, but if it's 5 or more, I found it's impossible to count. You just sort of have to look
Yeah,
and
you
try.
eyeball it.
It's I have no idea exactly what they're scoring on that exercise.
But it goes in the flexibility category?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, thanks.
David has his virtual hand up.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, I think that was in the speed category, and so they're actually testing, how quickly you can see things.
Oh, yeah.
Also,
all right.
well, when I was
Yes,
looking
you're
at
right.
that,
It was in the speed category.
yeah, but also I was looking at that and said, this looks a whole lot like finding the best fit line to a bunch of data points, where you're trying to, draw a line that evenly splits the points above and points
Yeah,
below.
right.
So there's other things like that happen. The other thing I was going to say is that, there's some other things that are out there on the web for, doing training stuff. And one of the ones which I've looked at a little bit is something called brilliant.org. And it's basically, it's almost like, a different way of doing school stuff, but it's basically set up for math and computer science. So if there's people here that want to up their game in computer science or understanding computers, that's another place to look. It's called brilliant.org. It sponsors a lot of different YouTube science videos and things like that. And that's, they keep offering updates on that, but it's the same kind of thing. You can see things for, doing algorithms stuff. There's a whole section on how AI systems works, and basically is, if you're not so much just trying to test your cognition, but you're actually trying to learn new stuff, Brilliant is a place that you can go.
Okay, I got a little bit of that, but I'm sorry, the acoustics here aren't very good. Let me go on to one other thing. One of the tools up here, this is the bar across the top that shows different things. Here's an area called Insights. And you get all sorts of, these guys really go wild with analyzing data. And you could get really wrapped up in understanding why they do certain things. But there's one thing over here that I hope I can find it again. Here's an interesting thing, your occupational profile. This is one thing that I thought this would really be good for young people, high school graduates and high school kids and such, to see what their aptitude is that indicates what directions they should go in a profession. So here's my occupational profile. And this says based on your relative luminosity strengths and weaknesses, your profile is most similar to people who work in military. How's that, Hank?
You're
Now,
signed
here's
up,
what they
Will.
say.
You're signed up,
Members with this
Stan.
occupation tend to be stronger at spatial memory, in pinball recall, and weaker at quantitative reasoning in chalkboard challenge. And the blue is where I fall, all around here. And the people in military, according to their estimate, is in the gray area. I thought that was interesting, and I tossed that in for Hank's benefit. And also interesting is they rank me in various areas. So they say I'd be best off in the military, R&D, arts and design.
Let's
Just
see
similar.
one where you're bad, Will. Down at the bottom, can we see the in law or education, for example? See how you
I'm least similar to education and law. These are continuum from one area to another. So
If
this
you-
is the absolute worst. And
if
up
you
here
click-
is the absolute most similar, they say, and less similar.
Can we see the one down at the bottom and you actually show us the similarity, show us the algorithm? Yeah. That does completely quite a
So,
bit out of sync.
people in education, and I'm the gray area. I think that's different than the way the other one was plotted. The colored was me, and anyway, I'm down here.
Stanley, what is pinball recall?
What is the what?
Pinball recall.
Oh, I don't recall that. What happened here?
I think that's just one of the types of games that they have, and they just categorize them into groups.
Yeah. And if you're interested, I'd suggest you go in to the site and play the games and do what you want. But like I say, if you want the historic and maybe even the comparison, incidentally, I thought, gee, it'd be neat if they had a comparison to other demographics, such as gender, race, education, but they don't have that. They don't ask you your race or education level or gender. And
Not
well,
allowed to do
but
that.
that would be interesting information, but they don't even ask you questions like that. They do ask your age, and that's the only demographic that they have in here.
Stan, I just want to point out when you were playing the game, I noticed there was a countdown timer heading towards 0 when the game would end, so you know how much time is remaining. There was also, I think, something over on the right end, which might have been like difficulty levels. I don't think that's what it was
Yeah.
called.
They do have difficulty levels.
And there was a pause button.
Yes, there is a pause button, and you can stop midstream if you get a phone call in or something like that.
I think this is fascinating.
Yeah.
I want to thank you profusely, Stanley, for volunteering to do this.
Well, you prompted it by asking for us to talk about programs that we use and consider valuable. And this is one of them.
And I'm gonna pursue that. I think it's next week that I've scheduled that to go through and ask everybody who shows up to just tell us what programs you use a lot and what you really like. 2 or 3.
He has a question.
Yeah, Willie.
Yeah, somebody mentioned about a group rate. I see a group of people that might benefit from this right here.
Yep.
Maybe we can put some of our organization funds towards a membership for everybody.
Well,
I
I
think
think that's a good idea. If somebody wants to take the lead on that, I'll be gladly, Will did something similar to that with some program in the past where there was a group rate.
the malware bites.
Would
I think
anybody like to organize that?
cover that during a board meeting to spend
Yeah, we can
senior
bring
computer
that up
group
during a board meeting.
dollars.
How much interest is it in the people over here who have not used it before but would be inclined to?
Wave your hand, please. Lots of waving.
All right, well, that looks like I count 3 or 4. I count 4 hands up.
If we don't want to necessarily fund for the entire group, maybe those of us interested could be a group of 5 or 6 to get the group right.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that.
And of course, this is not the entire membership here today, so maybe we could do something.
I don't think we
like that.
should use funds from the organization. I think it should be individual.
Maybe we could go on to other people's hands that are raised. Don?
Well, thank you very much for presenting that, Stanley. I know in my case, I certainly have benefited and still need to work on it all the time, memory exercises. One of the things that I have used that I have found works very, very well is music. If you can do memory exercises such as memorize all the words and all the notes to a song, and then the parts that are on the song, that it is a major challenge to, and will help your memory, and you'll get better and better and better significantly. Another thing I did was, and Hank has seen this, I have done all 5 minutes of Abbott and Costello's Who's on First. Okay, it's 5 minutes as fast as you can go. Okay, to do Abbott and Costello's Who's on First. And I played Bud Abbott, and I can do any of those roles.
Is there anyone here who doesn't know what that is? Wave your hand and we'll get Don to demonstrate.
I can do a video of that, but I'm sure everybody in this vintage knows Abbott and Costello.
No, we got a hand up. Who doesn't?
We got a hand up for other things.
Okay, but that what I'm saying is doing memory exercises is really something that we all need to do and does work. Okay, it is, we might not think it does, but I had major benefits from doing it in those 2 particular cases, and I think that it definitely does work. It's a commitment to time, and there is a benefit, and it's sometimes not immediate. It takes a while. Thank you, Stan.
Thank you,
Speaking
Don.
of memory, if I might, the tests in Lumosity on memory, there are tests for short-term memory that ask you to remember a pattern that just flashed off of a fraction of a second ago. And you only have a fraction of a second to mimic that pattern. That's short-term memory. But they also have tests for what I would call long-term memory, which is facial recognition. They have something called a barista, I think, where you're shown a cartoon of people coming up and ordering beverages. And you have to remember their name and from whether it was a week ago or a month ago that you saw them, and they order something and you got to remember that while other people come and go. So it does have a memory exercise function, and it works on both short-term memory, which is like less than a second, to long-term memory, which is within a month or so. Sharon, would you care to?
Sure. I know that I sometimes have a tendency to jump into things too quickly. And my concern for this is if there's someone in this group or that is a member that knows enough about safety and security, this needs to be researched before you jump into something. That's my opinion. So, because I know that there've been some lawsuits against Lumosity talking about they're making somewhat false claims. That's been in the past. I don't know what's improved since then. That was just a quick search during this discussion. So, and I think taking the funding from the organization is not a wise idea. I think we should, if you're interested in it, pay for it yourself with the group, whoever wants to sign up. That's what I'm sharing. Thanks.
I had not heard that there was any pushback on Lumosity for anything. I would like to hear more about that.
I just did a research while we were talking. I'm sure we can all do research.
Okay, I'll check into it. That's interesting.
And
Thank you for that alarm or warning.
and before we
Bill.
go on to someone else, may I leap in here and point out to everybody that Sharon put something interesting up on the chat that lists several different places like this. Elevate is one, Lumosity is one, Brain HQ is one, Cognifit is another, Peak is another, and Neuronation. So there's a lot of people in this business, and maybe you
Yes,
want to look
I meant to
around.
mention that there are others. This is the only one I've tried. And there may be others that are better, cheaper, faster, slower, better for you for whatever reason. But I'm just relating my experience. I have no outside knowledge of neurology or memory practices and things. So this is just one of many, but it is what it is. Will?
Yeah, I'm concerned about my memory because it's starting to get a little bit slow. But I was talking to somebody the other day about memorizing names. He said that he attended a group one time of about 40 people, and they sat in a circle, and they started with the first man to give his name, I guess where he lived, and a couple other pieces of information. Then the second person had to repeat what he said and add their information. And this went on so that the third person still had to say the first one, the second one, the third one. He said by the time he got around to the last person at 40, he could repeat everything that everybody else had said. And so it appears that repetition is very important in memory. So I was kind of interested in that analysis. I do it by trying to do a relationship to something, but I find that doesn't always work.
Good to know. Willie?
Well, since the Brain HQ comment was evoked, I'm going to throw in my 2 cents. I've been a member of, or what do you call it, subscriber to Brain HQ since 2018. So it's been about 5 years. I've been working the same sort of, they call them exercises, not games, but very similar. Anyway, it is you can get it for free if you're a student and you take the class in brain fitness through the community college. And like I said, I've been doing that since 2018, and they got the same sort of metrics. It's very similar, Stan, but.
Okay, good to know.
And that's through community college?
Yeah, through community college. The same stuff that I've been talking about for the couple of years that you have to take a class. If you're enrolled in the class, in brain fitness class, then you automatically get a free license to the Brain HQ website.
Anyone else using Lumosity or Brain HQ or something like it? Anyone else here? Wave your hand if you in front of your face if you do. All right. Once again, Stanley, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. That was very good.
And anyone else before we shift to Q&A?
As I said earlier, I try to do things by doing a relationship with something else. But then the problem is, how do you remember the relationship? That becomes the same problem.
Okay, we're in Q&A. Anyone have something they want to ask about, talk about, complain about? No complaints? Yes, Sharon.
I'm checking the video. Not a complaint, but just lack of knowledge that I have. The lack of knowledge that I have is when security updates come out, or any updates come out to whatever operating system you're using. They talk about kernels, they talk about WebKits, they talk about things that I don't grasp. Could we maybe tackle one of those each meeting a little bit as a discussion of what is a kernel, what is a WebKit? So we understand a little bit about, we're always agreeing to update, but we don't know what we're agreeing to update to or how it functions. So that's just one of my thoughts I'd like to toss out.
Would you say those two things again and spell them?
Kernel, Kernel, and WebKit is one word, WEBKIT. And there are more. So when you see an update for your operating system, it'll describe some of the things. I just don't understand what they do.
Anyone here know what kernels and WebKits are? I don't see Russ nodding.
Don's got a hand up.
David? Oh, Don Raymond knows.
Okay. Well, a kernel is something that almost every program has. It's basically the ground floor level of the program, the code that you laid down initially that other things in this operating system will call on to get things done. So that's a rootkit or the kernel associated with it. So it's the basic starting point for that particular program.
So when they do an update, there's something broken in the kernel?
Something is being changed, there's been an addition. For instance, well, try not to get too technical, but every computer runs on what's called a BIOS, basic input output subsystem. Okay. That means where's the keyboard? Where's the screen? Where's the speakers? Okay. So it has got to go in and find that stuff out on the basic input output subsystem. Where are the disk drives? What are their names? What are their sizes? And so the kernel of the system, in the cases of booting your computer, the first thing it fires off is the kernel piece of that so that you can write the rest of the program to make it work.
And is that what can be vulnerable to attackers?
Well, everything on a computer is vulnerable to attackers, even the stuff built into EPROMs or PROMs or anything. They're all a piece of electronics, but there's usually the kernel of anything is generally quite well protected. It's hard, but it does need updated because if Intel puts out a different chip, okay, and they add core processors to the chip, then they got to change the kernel or the iOS or the OS or something to handle the fact that hardware manufacturers are making updates.
Okay, so if I wanted to go to something to learn about these, Don, what do I do? Search for each one, or is there like a basic? What's it fall under? What category? Basic computer knowledge?
Well, I'm going to pass this football off to Ross Malloy. I'm sure he has maybe a better answer than I do on this particular.
No, that was helpful. That was helpful, Don. Is Ross here?
Yep.
Your question to me means you're trying to understand whether you should install this update or not.
No. My question is, what is the update doing? What is the factor? What does it mean when it's saying it's doing something to the kernel? So I understand it a little bit more. I don't just like to follow without understanding why I'm following.
I don't go in and look at why the update is there and then try to research it and understand what it's doing. My assumption is it's doing something that's going to help me with my computer and keep it more secure. On updates, I would the only thing that I would recommend on updates is to maybe wait a couple days after the update comes out, like it is for the operating system. If you wait 3 or 4 days, there's a lot of other people that have already tried it and found out if there is a problem with that update that causes a problem with another program or something else in your computer. All other than that, I could say is just take that information that's in that update that you're looking at and do a direct Google search of that. And maybe will take you to say, okay, we're patching this part of the kernel because.
Okay.
Saul has his hand up on that.
Yeah, if I could translate what Don said into simple, plain language. All operating systems have layers like onion skins, and at the very core in the center is the kernel. That's what starts out everything, and then everything builds upon it at higher level layers.
Thank you.
Usually the updates are to very often to close security holes that a program may have.
Yeah.
Or enhance performance, as they sometimes say too. Okay, thanks,
Okay,
fellas.
Dan has his hand up for a while. Dan?
Do you mean David?
No, he said Dan.
Oh,
Okay, I was distracted for a minute there.
oh,
I agree with Don in that all this is built in layers, and the BIOS is the lowest layer. The BIOS has been replaced by something that I can't remember the name of. It's another
UEFI. Yeah, UEFI. I think.
the newer computers don't use what they call a BIOS. It's basically the same thing, but they renamed it. It's L something. I don't remember what it is, but same thing. It's the lowest level. It's all in a PROM, and it's difficult to change that. But they do have programs that will change it. You can destroy your computer by changing it. And it goes on to the kernel. The kernel is basically Windows or Linux or Apple's program, whatever that is, but that's a next level of your computer. And then you get your programs, which are on top of that. So you got a bunch of layers there, and what they're trying to do is point you towards the layer that they're going to change. Is everybody confused on that?
I got a simpler, better example. One of the things I do frequently, 2, 3, or 4 times a month, is make my wife's great grandmother's cornbread. Okay, the kernel is the pan that I get out, and the next layer of it is the grease that I grease the inside of the pan with. Okay, and those are 2 pieces of the kernel that you got to do. You're going to have a mess trying to get your stuff out of the device that you're using. Okay, so it's a foundation type of a thing, like baking the cornbread. And one of the pieces of that in the oven that I have at 375, it takes exactly 21 minutes. I don't pay attention to the recipe because I haven't changed ovens in years. And I know that that oven in 375 will utilize that kernel of corn that's mixed into the meal. And it takes 21 minutes.
yet it's helpful to know that you got to grease that pan.
That's right.
So there's where my theory of knowledge comes in. Wanting to understand something helps me to remember I better grease the pan.
So Sharon, I just was going to say, I think the idea of these levels, and the reason it's called the kernel is because it's like that little nut in the middle.
Okay.
But things like WebKits are also basically inside the operating system, but they're a different subsystem. So there's be a subsystem for handling disk. There's a subsystem for handling your internet stuff. There's a subsystem. So all these different systems are part of the operating system. the programs, when they run, they call into the operating system to get things done. If they want to get to a disk, they call in the operating system. It knows how to get data in and off of the disk. If they want to open up a web connection, they call into that WebKit part of the operating system in order to do that task for them. So the operating system provides all these services to the programs that run. And the reason that you're getting updates is sometimes they find, problems or vulnerabilities in any one of these things. Things in the kernel, because they're so low level, they can do a lot of things. They've got, the system is totally open to a kernel process, whereas your program that you're running, there's safety checks along the way to make sure that your program doesn't try to talk to some memory that it's not supposed to or something. So that's why they want to patch the kernel as quickly as they can, because that's a place they can do, all sorts of damage and hide it from people. And then also, as someone else mentioned, that there's always new things coming up. There's new printers, there's new devices, and the people that build the operating, they don't know what things that you've bought. They want to make sure that if you have bought the new HP XX series printer, that when it plugs into your computer, it knows how to talk to that particular one. So they keep providing updates for those things.
Okay, thanks.
I want to leap in here and talk about something we might gain from this discussion. Willie recently did something wonderful for this group. He went to Chat GPT and he asked Chat GPT to put together a set of programs, discussions that might interest a group like us. He described a group like us to Chat GPT and said, could you please put together a list of discussions for, first of all, a group of basic brand new computer users, and secondly, a group of intermediate computer users. And Chat GPT spat out about 20, well, maybe 40, because there were 2 for each, lists of things that might make interesting discussions, and Willie has shared that with me. Now it's my job to find a canned presentation for each one of these, and that's going to take a year or more than a week. But I think one of the first ones I'm going to do is a discussion that describes BIOS and kernels and other such basics in what is a computer.
And when he did that Chat GPT, did he also use it for operating systems for Apple as well as PC?
They weren't specific. They were, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I can post. No, I guess not.
I think, Sharon, they were general topics.
Okay,
They
gotcha.
weren't specific to any
For an
particular
operating system?
platform.
Got it. Thanks.
Correct.
Thanks.
Will.
Yeah, I find it amazing that computers work at all. When you really get down and look at the guts of these things, so many things can go wrong. Fortunately, they've got a lot of auto correction that is built into almost all of it, because all it takes is to drop one bit here or there and suddenly nothing works the way it should. But anyway, I'm glad that everything works as well as it does, and it's amazing to me. A second thing though, on Facebook, they were showing a photograph, and it was a old sepia type photograph that had a picture of a young girl standing in the forest, but beside her was this tall giant gorilla. And everybody said, oh, that's all fake. And I said, you don't understand what's important here. And what's important here is that was generated by AI with just a simple request, which essentially said, show me a photograph of a young girl standing in the forest next to a giant gorilla in 1850. And within, I don't know, milliseconds, maybe certainly seconds, it cranked out this photograph, which looked in sepia to be 1850 photograph, or maybe around that time. But most of the people didn't appreciate that. They just thought somebody's trying to fool us with a fake Photoshop picture or video. So, but what's happening with AI is, to me, really amazing of what the future holds for it.
Thanks, Will. Willie?
Yeah, just to follow up on your discussion about the Chat GPT, if you took those, unfortunately, like the email that we sent back and forth yesterday about Chat GPT deprecating one of their functions, which is used to be if you shared a chat with somebody, they could follow on in that chat and continue it. They stopped that probably for security reasons. But if you took that same prompt that I gave it and continued on with the chat, I mean, the beauty of Chat GPT is you can talk to it like it's another discussion. So if you went in there after you've got those 40 different things and said specifically for Mac or specifically for iOS, it would give you all the stuff for that subject. And then you could break it down into, if you wanted to get down to the kernel level, you could ask it questions. So you just have to take it for what we all know is there's a lot of hallucinations and things that you have to cross check, but it's really good for subjects like that, for bullet points and giving you ideas on what to pursue next. So I hope something comes out of it. It was fun to pursue.
Thank you, Willie. Dan?
Changes to the operating system. Example of that would be someone came up with a new printer, like you said, the operating system has to recognize that printer, but also it may have different commands to send to that printer, because the people that built that printer have to be careful they don't void anybody else's patterns. So they can either pay to use the other person's patent, or they have to work around that patent. And Control P is a universal thing that they send out, but it doesn't really go to the printer. It goes to Microsoft if you're using Windows, and Microsoft decides what kind of printer it is there, and they send an entirely different command there. But the reason for that is somebody has a patent on Control P, and if you build a new printer, you can't use the same command sometimes without paying them to use something that they have patented already. So it gets kind of complicated on things like that, but we're lucky that the operating system has taken over a lot of that stuff. But when they come out with a new printer, they have to reorganize and get to talk to that particular printer. Used to be when we wrote a program, the program was written for a printer. And if you change printers, the program didn't work anymore because the printer didn't recognize the same commands that your program sent out. So now Microsoft interrupts that command you're sending over there and decides what kind of printer it is and what it has to send to that specific printer to get it to do what you wanted it to do. And if we come out with a new printer, they may have to patch their operating system or their kernel to say, yeah, if it's X37 printer, you need to use this command when it's a Control P. And that's where we are, and it gets very complicated. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Dan. Will? You're muted, Will.
Willie was talking about hallucinations in AI. I don't know that an awful lot of people know that AI can actually generate false information, and unless it tells you that it's false, you may believe it. And I'm hoping they're solving that problem by I've heard they're putting a watermark on it, not sure quite how they're doing that. But it's important that we know the difference between data that they have gotten from the internet, which may or may not be true. But what's even worse is if they go in and generate additional information that absolutely is not true. And they've shown that to happen. And I think they're have probably even solved it. I hope they have. But that's one concern with AI. That's all I have.
Stan? You're muted, Stan.
Please unmute, Stan.
Sorry. If you're interested in seeing the pinball and how to play, I'll share my screen and show that unless you have other things to do.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Nobody else has their hand up at the moment.
And Stan, you're muted again.
You're muted, Stan.
All
There
right,
you
now I
go.
think I'm unmuted.
Now you're unmuted. Go ahead.
I guess you're not seeing that.
We were before you changed
Okay,
tabs
you
or did
see
something.
a brown box with.
We did a moment
Mhm.
ago, Stan, but you clicked on something and it went away. So we're seeing your desktop, I think.
Well,
Just go back to Google Chrome, wherever you were, with luminosity.
now I've lost my share screen button.
Now we see it.
Still seeing it?
Yes, we can see it now.
All right, now I'm on the how to play.
But now it moved out of sight again. So I don't know what you're clicking on, but you're not focusing on that
Okay,
current
all right.
window.
All right, here's how to play. You can
Thank
see
you.
it now?
Yes.
Okay, I click on how to play and it says start point. This is a pinball. And they say, come down here and click here. So I click there. And then they get a little more complicated. And then okay, so then I click over here. And you'll notice challenge my. Okay, remember where the pointer is. Now it disappears, but I remember that it should go there. And then comes up again. And it comes there. Now I'll go to play. And now I look at that and I remember it. And so it seems to me it went here and should come over here if I remember correctly. Yeah, that's wrong. Okay. And okay, I've got that. My guess is there. Okay. And remember. I missed that, but I got it almost. Got that one. As you can see, they get a little more complicated and faster.
And harder.
Wow.
And Will, I noticed this one is called pinball. Maybe
Yeah.
that's part of the pinball leg of that web diagram they showed for your career or your best fit.
Yeah, I see. Wow. This is called an ego destroying program game.
And just remember, Stan does this for fun.
Okay, that's
It-
enough.
It is
Wow.
obvious that this machine or this program is challenging, and I'm sure it's semi-addicting and motivating. I would imagine that as you make mistakes, you say to yourself, I'm going to get better at this so I don't make that mistake next time.
Yeah.
I see
Well-
Stanley smiling.
My impression is that no matter what level you actually are, they start at a lower level. They allow you to start at a lower level, and if you're able to go up, they increase the difficulty. They do that by either, in that case, increasing the number of bouncers or shorten the period of time that you have to react. And if you start losing everything, it starts to get easier again. So it's it's doing what it's doing. That's the algorithm to make it do what it does. I don't know whether that's in order to make it easier or harder or more accurate, but it does adjust to your level.
Yeah.
And just because if you think you're getting all the answers all right and you're blazing through, well, it just may start getting harder for you because they will sense that and increase the difficulty.
And
Yeah,
I'm sure that I'm sure that that whole
David.
I'm sure that that whole process motivates you to use Lumosity more, which is good for their business.
Yes, it is. Granted, it's the thing. Will Wakely.
Yeah, Willie has a very interesting photograph up, and can you comment on that, Willie?
Sure. You were talking about AI generated things. I prompted DALL-E, which is another open AI source, because I had a discussion in one of my classes that we were talking about a nature preserve, and they were talking about how the pollution in the area is causing the problems with the otters, the sea otters. So I said to DALL-E, show me a sea otter collecting up sea urchins into a plastic bag that it found on the seafloor. And this is a AI generated piece of art, if you want to
He's
call
going
it that,
shopping.
where he's collecting up the sea urchins and putting them in the plastic bag that was thrown away, or pollution. It was sort of a social statement that both AI, we have to watch out for AI stuff, and you can also use it for a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
So that's my
Thanks, buddy.
background. That's my background picture. So I can change my backgrounds around. And
Willie, I got a question about that. Do you think it went out and found that photograph, or do you think it created that photograph?
well, it took me like 3 different prompts and iterations to get to it. So I think it creates it. I'm not really sure. That doesn't exist on the internet. I mean, you can take a picture of it and search, but I went through a couple iterations till I got to the point where it looked sort of real. I mean, you can see it's not real, but it's pretty close to, can fake some people out.
Do a Google image search for that picture you got and tell us maybe next week what you found, would you?
Okay.
I think
David?
it creates it all. Yeah.
Well, I think that's what qualifies as fake news in some ways. But I was going to comment on Stan. What it's doing is basically it's adapting to you, and what it's trying to do is trying to keep you in what's called the zone of proximal development, which is that portion where it's a little bit more difficult than you can do easily, but not so difficult that you give up to it, so that you keep trying. And that's and it's basically a very standard psychological theory called the zone of proximal development. It's just close enough that you think you can probably do it.
The zone of proximal ability?
Development.
The zone of proximal development.
Yeah.
And from what science and discipline does that come from?
Probably developmental psychology, first talked about with educating children.
Fascinating. And how come you're an expert in that?
I'm no expert, but when I took some education classes, that's part of the things that we were taught about. And my wife complains to me that whenever I hear something, I never forget it.
Your long-term memory is you score high, huh?
I haven't been to the Luminosity, so how do I know how well I do?
And my wife says every time I hear something, I forget it.
There's a certain amount of strategic forgetting that is necessary.
In a husband-wife relationship, I think that's probably very important.
Incidentally, speaking of what we were, but it brings to mind, I would be willing to share my LPI score with anyone else who would be willing to share their LPI, but I'm not offering it off in the general public. That is sort of private information, but I would be able to compare to anybody who has worked with Lumosity and can give me their score for their age. Well, one other thing I've found is you can also check down in different age groups and see where you hit the 50th percentile. And that gives you an idea of what age my score would put me in the 50th percentile, and that's sort of interesting also.
Stan, I think earlier you suggested, unless I misunderstood, that you weren't really focused on comparing other people's scores in your age group. You were more focused on just improving your own abilities.
Yeah, so you don't think I look at how I compare with other people?
Just looking for consistency here in what you're telling us.
I'm just not sharing it with other people, that's all.
You would embarrass me.
Although I think part of the idea of the Luminosity is when you start off, you're probably not performing at the level that you could. And as Stan's history showed, it takes several months to a year before you get to be performing at the ability that you can. And like we were talking with this development thing, as long as you stay there and you keep getting better, you can make a lot of impressive progress.
I find memory to be a very fascinating subject, and I have no idea, especially how you remember things just milliseconds after you've said them. You know, it doesn't seem to me like you have time to generate any sort of chemical bonds in that length of time, but maybe you can. Maybe those things happen in microseconds or picoseconds.
The human brain is, if not one of the, perhaps the most amazing thing on this earth. I see a nodding head or two.
Well, I find it amazing that we all have essentially the same reality, you know, that our senses feedback information that appears to be common to everybody, which to me says, you know, DNA made that portion of our brain that does the translation of the signals from our senses and converts them over to images that we call our reality. That I'm amazed that it isn't completely different, but it appears that the majority of people have the same reality, at least when we do comparisons.
Philosophically, that's the basis of philosophical realism, that there is something out there that we really are perceiving, because so many people seem to perceive what's out there in the same way.
Now, I think there are signals that we get through our senses that we interpret as a certain way, depending on
Everything,
how it is.
yeah, everything is interpreted. Everything goes through a bunch of filters. But the fact that we generally have, we seem to function in groups in the world, and it's not total chaos. There's something beyond us that is, has its own stability that we're reacting with. And that's my philosophical spin for the day.
I think on a more basic level, along that line, we are certainly superior to any spam filter out there, because we know what is spam and what isn't, and they don't.
Well, before we sign off, I want to remind everybody that the subject for next week will be each person that shows up will be asked, and if they don't want to participate, that's fine, but they'll all be asked to tell one or two things or programs or subjects that you find on your computer that you enjoy, and tell us why you enjoy it, perhaps. And you can't all say Zoom.
I want to thank Stan for a good presentation. That was really interesting, Stanley.
Hear, hear.
Thank you all.
And if anyone else gets into this as actively as Stan has and does it for a while, please think about coming back and telling us what your reaction is and how well it helped you, or how little, or and if anyone like Sharon knows of the other places that this sort of thing is done and has some experience with it, please, someone tell us about something other than Lumosity that does the same sort of thing.
Yeah, that's why I'm grateful to Willie for mentioning Brain HQ.
Well, also, I'd be interested in other people who would be willing to join into a group purchase. I have no idea what the difference in price is, but if you are interested, anybody, raise your hand if you're interested in a group purchase of this luminosity. We got 2, 3. I don't know what it takes. 4. We might get up to, maybe the number is 5. I don't know. I can check into it and see.
Could you do that for us, Will? That would be a great
Sure.
thing to have as a piece of data for next time.
Okay.
Miriam?
All right. Yes, Miriam, you have your hand up.
Oh, I don't know how my hand got up. I didn't do that.
Never mind.
Yeah, I'm looking for the never mind buttons.
I have a question
Okay,
for Willie.
I think we're winding down.
I have a
Sharon
question for
has a
Willie.
question.
I'm listening.
Yeah, Willie, could you put in the chat the information about the Brain HQ through SDCCD?
It's a little bit late in the show, but sure.
It's just a link, right? And we can always copy the link. Thanks.
If you hold on and don't stop the meeting before I get it in there, sure.
Okay, well, I'm sure we can keep alive the for long enough. Just don't distract Willie here. So Sharon, I just want to say that's a lovely background that you have. That's very festive for the season here.
Good. I did a lot of searching to find an image I liked.
You didn't generate it from ChatGPT?
No, I generated it from myself, searching.
Oh, you're using that highly sophisticated non-spam filter that Saul was talking about.
Yes.
Let's just say either Willie's background or Sharon's is not going to get him artistic points in luminosity.
Correct, but we do have good search skills.
This is true.
Okay, the link that I put in there is I'm jumping ahead one step to like more of a tutorial that you can look at.
Great.
Rather, it's just brainhq.com. Not hard to figure out, but this should link you directly to a try before you buy kind of thing.
And then from there we put in San Diego continuing education to find out how to get that.
Not at all.
Oh.
This is a commercial enterprise, and that's what they sell it just like Lumosity. When you go through the process of enrolling in the class, which obviously you're a student, if you sign up for the Brain Fitness class, which starts in February 2nd, you automatically get a license to use the Brain HQ website. So you have to go through the school system to get to the freebie, just like getting Microsoft 365 and all the other perks that we get for being a student.
So Brain Fitness, got it.
And I can certainly give that more information on that either privately or later. But again, running up to the end of this meeting, I'd rather not get into the details of enrolling.
Well,
I have a YouTube video. If you go to my YouTube site, you can see a YouTube video how to do it. But
I thought you might have already sent it out. I did subscribe to your little YouTube channel.
Well, if you look at that YouTube, it'll show you how the class, where the website is for the classes to go to and how to enroll. You still have to, not only have to enroll, but you have to, what do you call that? Become a student. You have to, you have to be a student before you enroll. And that's the hard part, is getting your student ID and all that stuff set up.
Sure.
So, like I said, I did that back 15 years ago. I was a student for other reasons, and they still knew I was a student. So I just enroll every year.
Is it true we cannot copy the chat window?
In this session of Zoom, that's correct. The APCUG does not permit that.
I think we ought to.
You can click on the links
and
it'll take you to where it goes. And then you can copy whatever you go to.
True, but it would be so much easier just to copy the chat.
It's harder than clicking a link. Will, come on, give me a break.
We ought to push on APCUG to allow us to copy the.
It's one click.
No, not one click. There's a whole lot of things on there I'd like to see.
I understand. All right. Dan has his virtual hand up.
I have been copying the chat, and I've just finished copying the chat today. But I'm using a Chromebox system, and it should be all the same on everything. We talked about this last week. because it's just using the web browser to do that. But I've copied that and pasted it into my email, and it works fine.
Did you use a Control C copy?
The thing is, you don't want to click on the links because that'll get you to the link. But if you click down somewhere and scroll up and copy all the text without clicking on a link, and you just paste it into your email.
Mine
And-
doesn't go to
and-
my copy.
Yeah, excuse me. Well, Dan, just to clarify, are you joining this Zoom meeting through a web browser?
I click on the link that's provided by Hank.
What I'm asking
Zoom,
is, you're not using a Zoom app on your Chromebox, is that correct?
No, I'm not using a Zoom app.
And most everybody else here is, and it may work differently because of that.
Yeah, I just tried it. I tried highlighting and then Control C, and it did not work.
Well, I'm the host and it does work for me, and I've just copied it.
Well, that's because you're the host.
I know. And I've just copied it into a Microsoft Word document, and I can send that by email to everybody if that's
Oh, that's nice.
Okay, Will, did you use a web browser, or you're not using a web
No,
browser?
I'm using Zoom, not a browser.
Did you click on Hank's link, or did you go in first through your web browser?
I clicked on Hank's link, but I had Zoom installed.
Okay, we go through this every week.
Yeah, we do.
You know, it's if you're using the web browsing version, Dan, that's great. And then you're using the web browser's command to control and to copy. And Will is using the application. And in the application, it doesn't work where you do a Control C because you're using the app.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand exactly what you're saying, but
On your computer,
guess-
Dan, you're
Yes.
not using the Zoom application. You're
That is
going through a
correct.
browser. That's why it works for you and it doesn't work for Will, because Will is using the Zoom application, the program on his computer, not through a browser. But yes, both
Well,
of
if he
you
just
are getting
clicks
the
on Hank-
link from Hank's email.
If he just clicks on Hank's link, doesn't that go through a web browser?
No, sir. It opens up in the application.
Well, don't you have
Okay.
to have the application open first?
No,
He doesn't have the application on his Chromebox.
Oh,
He's
okay.
going through the browser.
Yeah.
So,
Can-
Will, you can join a Zoom meeting through what Zoom calls a web client, which is simply using a web browser without using their application
Okay,
that you are using.
understand. Hank, I would appreciate it if you could send me the document.
send you the what?
The chat.
You said you would copy it.
I'm going to send it to everybody. I'm in the process right now. I've
Okay.
saved it
Thank
on
you.
my computer, and I will send it to all. What do we have? About 100 people who get the invitation in a separate email as soon as this is done. And I'm coming back now to, here we are. Dan has his hand up. Dan, you're not muted. Go right ahead. Oh,
I think he just hadn't
Just
lowered it yet.
you unhanded yourself.
But it was good to know that if you're using the web client for Zoom, you can indeed copy the chat. And Will is welcome to join the meeting in that manner if he'd prefer to do so.
Okay.
And I have a third party app that'll copy it too. But I bought that third party app in the Apple store. So it copies too. It's called Text Sniper.
Yeah, lots of workarounds.
Yep, yep.
Okay, everybody. I'm about to shut this down. Be happy to see you all here next week. Be ready to share.